Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this special meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council. I'm Councillor Andrea Powell and I will be chairing this evening's meeting. Councillor David Ruane as Vice Chair will be supporting me this evening. I have a few housekeeping announcements before we start. Evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is the staircase opposite, and meet at assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. Officers will assist with any evacuation. Please listen to the debate in silence. Mobile phones. As a modern council, both officers and members will use their electronic devices throughout this meeting. Please can everyone ensure that their mobile telephones are switched to silent during the meeting, and also laptops. Please could you press F1 if it's a council device on your laptop to ensure that that's on silent mode as well. For votes on items, I will initially ask council if the issue can be agreed. I will pause to allow councillors to indicate whether they would like a vote, a recorded vote, or to move an alternative. As we've just heard from the monitoring officer, use of microphones is key. If you were to listen back to the recording of last month's meeting, it was very clear that only people speaking clearly into the microphone could be heard on the broadcast. So if you want your words of wisdom to be recorded for posterity and heard by the huge audience that we will have online tonight, please ensure that you do use the microphones appropriately, speak clearly and slowly into the microphone, about a hand's distance away from the microphone. So before speaking, please tap the base of the microphone until the light turns green and then speak. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the meeting. I've received apologies for absence from councillors Cooper, Khan, Bretherton and Tinsley. Are there any further apologies?
Also, sorry, Chair, also Councillor Kelly-Hinton.
Councillor Hinton, thank you. We also, I believe, can't see him, but I think, no, Councillor James Lorry is hoping to join us online, but obviously won't be able to vote on any items. So item 2, declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or any conflicts of interest in respect to items on the agenda for this meeting? No, I see none. Item 3 is urgent business and chair's announcements. I have no items of urgent business, but I understand that the leader would like to make a statement at this point. Councillor Philipova-Rivers, please.
Try the microphone. How is this for everyone? I just wanted to quickly update on a devolution meeting that took place yesterday between various leaders from the Thames Valley region plus Swindon. Hopefully you will have seen a comms email come into your inboxes about an hour ago, I think, which details some of that, but I thought it would be important to say a few words about it. So I do have something which has hopefully will help, but I am actually happy to take some questions as well if people have them. So yesterday I joined the majority of the other leaders in the area for a meeting in Reading to discuss a letter from MHCOG asking us to support a foundation strategic authority, FSA, which was on a predetermined geography of government's choosing, which included Swindon. As we have spoken in this chamber before and had discussions around this, our position has always been that we do not believe that Swindon is a good fit for a Thames Valley strategic authority. It is important to remember that the decision on how to respond to the government's letter ultimately falls to the leader of our OCC, who's somewhere here today. But we have been really grateful that as district councils, we have had a voice around the table, and God knows we have used it. So to say I'm really quite disappointed that what initially had begun as a kind of locally led process to establish the coherent authority area ultimately became a top-down proposal based on what is government's agenda rather than our local realities. There have been changes in ministers, so I think the previous minister had been quite cautious about not to set out a kind of a proposal, especially one on the geography, although strongly encouraged leaders to consider the inclusion of Swindon. We actually ended up with a prescribed geography, and we were asked to say whether we wanted it or we got nothing at all. So I remain firmly committed to constructive dialogue about the principles of devolution in the Thames Valley and to ensure that the outcomes are the best that we can get for our communities. And I continue to believe that the decisions affecting our residents are best made as close to them as possible. I am not anti-devolution. But we need to make sure that effectively what will be of kind of a regional government does reflect our character, priorities and aspirations for the area. So the way that the process is set up, it means that if only one of the upper tier authority does not agree to government's proposal, that the whole proposal falls. So effectively there is veto power that sits with each of the upper tier authorities. So this is where we are at now. There were 2 authorities that objected and many that expressed very similar concerns, but were ultimately, although unhappy, were able to accept that government's proposal. I think really the barriers in terms of accepting what very much felt like being dictated to are 2, and I share both of those. One of them is around the fact that, as we have spoken before, about Swindon and its inclusion. And the reason is that strategic authorities work best in areas that are already a coherent and integrated economic area. So think about Manchester, think about Liverpool. We do not have that as a Thames Valley. We have many different centres, so we say we're polycentric and we've got various economic hubs. Now, in order to, that are partially connected at the very best, in order to connect them, i.e. to engineer a coherent economic geography, you would need investment. Adding an additional economic hub only adds to the need for that investment, which currently is not on the table with the Foundation Strategic Authority. And for me, that was very much the reason why I personally, if I had the choice, would not have accepted this proposal. So I will leave it there. I'm very happy to ask questions. The reality is we don't know where we go from there. Government, the ball is in government's court. If they want to not leave a gap in the Thames Valley shaped like Berkshire and Oxfordshire, I hope that they will come to the negotiating table.
Thank you for that statement. I'm actually going to move on. So we have other things to debate tonight. I'm sure members will want to read the information, the communication that's arrived, as you say, just recently in our inboxes and come back to you with other questions. Okay, so we're going to move on. So I'm just going to carry on with my chair's announcements. Well, since the annual meeting of council in May, the number of invitations to represent the council at various events across the county has begun to increase. And tomorrow evening, I shall be attending a National Association for Primary Education concert at Dorchester Abbey to hear a choir made up of children from local schools from across our district and others. These concerts have been running all week, so some of you may also have attended to hear children singing from schools in your own towns and villages. I was also very privileged to be invited to a dinner on the 9th of June for new mayors and chairs, hosted by the Lord Lieutenant of Oxfordshire and the Bishop of Dorchester, again at Dorchester Abbey. It was inspiring to meet so many civic representatives from across the county and to be joined by Councillors MacDonald as well, and to be recognised by the Lord Lieutenant for the work that we all do to speak up for our communities and to strengthen local resilience and cohesion. Now, I've been allowed to use my chair's prerogative to invite Anne-Marie Hicks as a representative of Styleacre, one of my chair's charities, and Rachel? Yes, and Rachel, to come to speak to council this evening. So would you like to come forward and speak to council? We need a microphone.
press it. When you finish, press it again and it'll go back to you.
I can tap the microphone icon at the face.
Oh, we got it.
There you
We
go.
got it.
Sorry, that was difficult, wasn't it?
Explain it.
I was pressing the middle. Just to say thank you, Andrea, for inviting us today. We've been privileged to be nominated as Andrea's charity for the year, which is amazing, along with Cycling Without Age. And it was really lovely. We had a picnic planned a couple of weeks ago, but the weather has been awful, so we did have to cancel it. But Cycling with Age and Andrea did come along, and we did manage to get a few people that we support. So we support adults with learning disabilities and autism across Oxfordshire. So they did come along, and we managed to get a few people that we support out on the trikes, which was amazing. So thank you very much for that. And just a little bit, I think some of you, I do know some, there are some very familiar faces in here, but I'm not sure how many people know about Styleacre, but I just wanted to sort of introduce Styleacre and what we do. So we support adults, as I said, with learning disabilities and autism across Oxfordshire. We support over 270 adults in the district. We've got 36, all over 36 supported. We've got a couple more that have just joined us, I think. So supported living houses where we provide 24-hour support for adults within the community. We've got 3 community day hubs. We've got one in Wallingford, one in Howbury Park, one in Didcot, and one in Banbury. We've got community support, and we also have a lot of projects which are 100% funded, which is we're really grateful for the support that we get and for any money that is raised. One of those being our work programme where we provide work and volunteer opportunities for adults across the district. We've got over 120 placements at the moment. And there are opportunities, some of those opportunities that people wouldn't have if we didn't have our programme. Rachel is with me. She's one of those
here today.
So she's one of the people that we support and has been benefited greatly from the work programme. And we've got over 60 organisations across the district offering volunteer and work opportunities for those people. And we've got 5 social enterprises. So we're very busy. So we've got our tea room up in Blueberries. If you're ever visiting or you're ever doing a meeting, then you're more than welcome to come along and have a tea and cake. Cake is made by the people we support at our community hub in Didcot. We've got the charity shop in Wallingford. We've got a medal making business up in Banbury, which is 100% biodegradable medals. So you can have your medal, enjoy your medal. Once you've had enough of the medal, you can plant it and grow wildflowers, which is really lovely. And we've got a company that supports us with shredded paper to be able to make those medals. And we've got a gardening team which go out, started off from doing the gardens within our houses. They go out and they're now doing public gardens and running their own enterprise, doing gardens across the district, mainly South Oxfordshire, but across Oxfordshire. I brought Rachel along with me. So Rachel comes a lot to a lot of our events. She's one of our ambassadors for Styleacre. So I just wanted to, I think Rachel would like to introduce herself, what she does at Styleacre, and how you benefited from the work programme.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Hello, my name's Rachel. I'm one of the ambassadors. Thank you for choosing our charity from you guys. So I go to T2 on Monday. So I do like the gym. I do jobs in the afternoon, and then I go to work, which is based in Didcot Bingo, which is New Cornet. So I go there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and other Saturdays. And then Friday, I have music and dance every Friday morning. And then I go to T2, then home. I'll be exhausted by then. But my life is so much busier and busier all the time. So now I'm doing housework, gardening, loads of stuff. So I do fundraising with
Opportunities, haven't you?
yeah, lots of opportunities. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so I just so I think just hearing that, but Rachel's, we've done a training program, and Rachel's gone through from volunteering at Styleacre to actually having a paid role out in the community from the experiences she's gained. So it just sort of shows what we can do and how we can give those opportunities. So I won't hold, I know you've got a busy agenda, so I won't hold you for too much longer, but I just want to say thank you. And I have got some leaflets here. I wasn't sure how many people, but if you wanted to take one, it just tells you about what we do. More than happy to have conversations. And yeah, if anybody knows of any work opportunities or any organisations that would like to get involved, then please perhaps get in touch via Andrea. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne-Marie and Rachel, for coming along tonight. I know you have to leave because you've got a busy meeting, another meeting to go attend to. Yes.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Councillor MacDonald.
Can I just say thank you very much indeed for the hard work. I know it's not visible all the time, but you help people reach their full potential, where otherwise the circumstances could be horrendous. So again, thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So finally, before we move on to the main agenda items, I would just like to remind you again of my Just Giving page, which has just been set up to raise funds for Styleacre and for Cycling Without Age over the course of this year. And thank you to those who've already made generous contributions. I also have a date for your diaries, Friday the 23rd of October, when I'll be hosting a Chairs fundraising quiz at Crowmarsh Village Hall with food provided by Styleacre. So please spread the word and pull together teams of 8 to take part in what should be a great evening. So thank you. We will now move on. We have no other registered speakers for this evening's meeting. So we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the South and Vale Local Development Scheme. Cabinet at its meeting on the 4th of June 2026 made recommendations to Council on the South and Vale Local Development Scheme. And before we begin, I will ask for a proposer and a seconder. Would Councillor Simpson like to move Cabinet's recommendations? Yes. And is that seconded? Councillor Morgan, thank you. So Councillor Simpson, would you like to introduce the item?
Thank you. This paper is associated with the Joint Local Plan, although it's an update to the timetable rather than about the content of the Joint Local Plan. The Local Development Scheme, or LDS as shorthand, is the Council's statutory timetable for preparing and adopting our planning policy documents. Members will recall that the Joint Local Plan 2041 is currently under examination. And through that process, the planning inspectors have been clear, both in hearings and in subsequent correspondence, that the Council should update the LDS to reflect the revised examination programme. As you'll appreciate, once a plan is submitted, the examination timetable is largely in the hands of the inspectors. Since submission, the programme has evolved with additional hearing sessions and a longer overall timescale than originally anticipated. As a result, the current LDS published on our website no longer reflects the latest position within the August 2024 version of the LDS, which put adoption of the Joint Local Plan in December 2025. The revised LDS before you responds directly to that request from the inspectors and brings the timetable up to date. In particular, it reflects a shift in the anticipated adoption date from December 2025 to May 2027, based on how the examination has progressed. Alongside the updated Joint Local Plan timetable, the LDS also includes some routine updates to reflect progress on other planning policy work, including newly made neighbourhood plans, the status of conservation area appraisals, and the current position on any local development orders. The report also proposes a practical delegation to allow minor updates to be made as the examination continues, so that we can keep the statutory timetable accurate and publicly available. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, would you like to speak now or afterwards?
I'll reserve my right, please.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor, is there any debate on this item? Would anybody like to speak? Just to show that I've read the paper, I would like to just point out an error, which is just a typo. The Warburton Shillingford Neighbourhood Plan is listed as February 2025. It was actually February 2026 that it was made. So that's, thank you. Okay, well, if there's no discussion on this item, Councillor Simpson, would you like to sum up and put your recommendation? I'm begging your pardon. You said you were going to reserve your right. Yes, please. Councillor Morgan, would you like to speak now?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. I'd like to thank Anne-Marie and officers for all the work done to date on our joint local plan and for all the work that remains to be done through the hearing process coming up later this year. The new planning conditions being forced on local authorities by this government means that our local plans are an increasingly important focus to state what we want to do. So this is really, really important. So although today is a procedural motion, the results and outcome are hugely important for all of our residents and our area. So please support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson, please come up.
Yes, I mean, basically, it is something we need to do. It is in a way process, but it's a really important factor as well. And I've just had a little note that apparently you are correct, Councillor Powell, and that will be updated. So thank you very much, and please vote for the motion. Thank you.
Councillor, can we agree the recommendations in this paper? Yep. Okay. Is that enough? Yep. Okay, agreed. Thank you. Yep. Okay. So we move on then to item 6. Having just agreed a new timetable for JLP1, I think we're moving on to a different topic of JLP2. Cabinet at its meeting on the 4th of June 2026 made recommendations to Council on the South and Vale Joint Local Plan 2045, hereafter known as JLP2. I'll ask again for proposer and seconder. Councillor Simpson, you'll be moving the Cabinet's recommendation, and Councillor Philippa-Rivers will be seconding. Thank you. Councillor Simpson, would you like to speak to your item?
Okay, clear your heads from the last item, please. This paper is about our next local plan. And again, it is a procedural paper rather than about planning policies themselves. The headlines are that we are now required by government to work on 2 local plans at once. Joint Local Plan 1 and a new local plan, which the report proposes we again do jointly with Vale. And this is called twin tracking. New government regulations require us to start preparing this next local plan, which we are calling Joint Local Plan 2, by the end of this month. Starting Joint Local Plan 2 is not instead of finishing Joint Local Plan 1, it is as well as. The regulations require our councils and 37 others around the country who also prepared their plans under the previous arrangements, i.e. the old National Planning Policy Framework and lower housing numbers, to start preparing our next local plan. So the regulations require our councils to start preparing our next local plan. The government wants a new system local plans to be prepared, consulted on, examined and adopted in 30 months. This paper sets up the arrangements of starting Joint Local Plan 2. So by law, by the 30th of June 2026, we need to issue a notice of commencement and publish our timetable for the new local plan. Prior to this, council decisions are required to progress our new local plan jointly with Vale. This is the content of today's paper. So by 31st of October 2026, then, we need to undertake a self-assessment of our readiness to prepare the plan, referred to as Gateway 1. Local government reorganisation means our councils will not be in place to adopt Joint Local Plan 2, but we have been told that we must start the process. So it will be the new unitary authority which will be able to adopt Joint Local Plan 2. So the recommendations in this report ask council to firstly, approve undertaking the local plan as a joint plan again. So that's a joint local plan with Vale of Whitehorse. Secondly, to agree the governance arrangements involving separate council decisions at key stages, not a joint committee. This is very much what we've been doing up to date with Joint Local Plan 1. And finally, approve the commencement of Joint Local Plan 2. So that's the notice of commencement that we are required to do by the 30th of June. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Philippa-Rivers, do you like to speak now or later? Later. Yeah, I was just going to come to that because I think we need to have the... Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Bennett. I think because this is quite a complicated topic and there's a lot of information in the paper, I think we'll start with any questions. So for clarity, so are there questions to the Cabinet member? Councillor Bennett.
This may be a question to the monitoring officer. Thank you for the introduction. Just trying to understand part C there, this council would approve commencement. And if for some reason the motion didn't pass and it was not a joint local plan, would council also have to vote to commence a non-joint local plan, or is that a cabinet decision? And then there would be a breach of the deadline potentially.
I think that is a monitoring officer question.
I think it is. I hope that was clear as to.
Through you, Chair, I'm grateful. So it would have to revert to Cabinet at that point, as I understand the process. Obviously, depending on how debate goes today and decision goes today, that may be a redundant question. But if we get to that position, then I'll have to ask for a short break and discuss that further with one of the planning officers as well.
Just to clarify, so it's council only has to approve the finished local plan, not the commencing of it. Is that? And the finished local plan definitely has to be approved by council.
By full council, yeah, that's a statutory obligation under the Planning Act, correct.
Are there any other questions for the Cabinet member before we go into debate? Yep, Councillor Casey Ray and then Councillor Giles. And I think, was there one over here? No? No. Okay, so Councillor Casey Ray.
Thank you. I think this is also a question for the monitoring officer. Can you hear me? So it's around the fact that if we approve this and there's this twin tracking, the JLP2 would not be able to be adopted in time for this council, so it would have to be adopted by the new council. So two bits of that question. I was always led to believe that we couldn't anticipate or bind the new council to anything. So in theory, the new council could reject this. Is that correct? I mean, like any council could, I suppose, but.
We're on uncharted territory in part here, if I'm absolutely frank with you. I understand officers have spoken with government departments about this and looked at other authorities' processes on planning. Technically, I think, yes, they could choose not to do it. We can't bind their hands, and for the reasons you've just given, that and the whole rule of it being a whole new authority with its own rights and responsibilities. Equally, and that's one of the challenges of the government's position, that this needs to proceed at this time, and others have already alluded to the fact that that's a challenging stance for authorities that are going towards LGR. But yeah, there is a great deal of uncertainty and uncharted territory on that. But at the moment, the best advice we've got is that we have to start the process. There may be deviations along the way because they change, or other government policy might change, as always. But at the moment, the best advice I can give you is that yes, we are compelled by the government's direction to take this forwards. But that there remains, in my mind, some uncertainty about exactly how that will work at a point in the future with the shadow authority. But it seems to rely on an awful lot of assumptions in that about how people will act and whether they'll act logically and as required by the guidance. All I can advise you to do is to act within the legal direction that we've been given by central government at this time for the reasons that they've set out. Whether we think it's a good idea or not, that's where we are, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, I can't be more certain on your behalf.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chair. Do you think, Councillor Simpson, that given we're going through LGR and obviously the pressure that places on the workforce, that it would only be a totally neurotic and out of touch government that would make us do two local plans at the same time?
Well, it wouldn't be our choice to do it, but the law requires us to. And going back to the earlier point raised by the Councillor Bennett and Councillor Casey Rarai, at the back of the report, you will also see the risks and recommendations. Some of what you asked was covered there. So you will see, you can see that just for your extra additional information as well. I would also just like to point out that our joint local plan 1, which we have done jointly with Vale, actually that worked very well. I had full support in council back in, I'm losing track of time. It was October 2024, I think. So I think it's worked well working together with the steering group and the round tables, and also the cost. It's sort of not quite half the cost of a plan doing it ourselves, but it does create a saving. And I know this council does like spending money on more fun things than planning, perhaps. So just bear that in mind as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Before we move to Councillor Snowdon, I think the monitoring officer wants to make an additional comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I should have had this at my fingertips, but just a reminder, if members, through you, Chair, if members look at the report at page 35, bullet point 4 says, additionally, if recommendation A, which we've been talking about, is not supported by council, Cabinet agreed to the preparation and production of a South Oxfordshire local plan and approved all of the above arrangements in respect of such a plan. So there is flexibility built in. Your hands are not that tied, but there's obviously a different recommendation at A. But that's the second point. I just wanted to make sure you had full awareness of that. And okay, thank you, Chair.
So, because you're talking about my question, I did see that. That's what was confusing me, is if Cabinet can do that, why do they need council to approve starting of a joint plan? That in recommendation C, but don't worry, it's not important.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Snowdon.
Thank you. A couple of little just clarifications, really.
Could you just speak more clearly into the microphone, please? Thank you.
Yeah. So if we're starting a second local plan to running alongside, then I'm a bit concerned that where's the evidence that the transport, GP capacity, schools, drainage, utilities, that can support further allocations? And my second question is more about this difference between the two. The first joint local plan that we're working on at the moment obviously had issues that cause delays and so forth. So what governance and process changes will prevent a repeat of those? And also you mentioned less than half, or almost half savings. Has a cost of the joint local plan been announced yet? Because it's not been completed, and I'm a bit concerned if we've got to commit to a 30-month joint local plan 2, then surely we're going to need way more resources and officers to be able to do what took us more time in a compressed time. So where are we getting that money from? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start from the last question, because actually we did apply and were successful in being awarded £108,000 each by the council. It certainly won't cover the whole cost of joint local plan 2, but we have sufficient funds in the budget going forward as well. In terms of resources, our officers have restructured a bit the way they work, and they have been phenomenal, from going from very open-eyed telling us that we were going to be twin tracking to really embracing it in the sense of what they know they need to get done. So I'll take this opportunity to thank officers, because they have really stepped up to match this. Your earlier questions, evidence. Don't forget, this is today. This is about notice of commencement. We haven't even started the actual policies, evidence gathering yet for joint local plan 2. That is further down the line. So do hold all those questions, because I do think that we want to make sure that our members are as engaged and the public are as engaged as possible and as can be as they were in joint local plan 1, with when that stage is appropriate in the process. And delays to the timetable. Well, as you well know, once, or I hope you know, because I keep trying to remind people, once a plan is submitted for examination, the timetable is largely in the hands of the inspectors. So although we submitted the plan in December 2024, the timetable has been out of our hands since then. And so, you know, that really is out of our remit, if you like. So all I can say is that we are a little bit the guinea pigs with this being the first tranche of joint local plan 30-month of local plan, the new local plan process of 30-month process. So it's in any of our views, having been through local plans before and adoption of local plans before, it does seem enormously ambitious to produce a local plan in 30 months. So as to whether that timetable will be successful, we'll have to see what the future brings.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon-Creed and then Councillor Turner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is that whilst I appreciate that this iteration is primarily focusing on planning, on the strategic planning element, in our JLP, the consultations that we spent a lot of time and money on across the residents had all the other elements of our JLP to do with environment, to do with all the biodiversity, to do with all the amenities and transport, etc., that our residents requested. Has there been any indication going forward about the content of the second iteration? Will any of that be included? Will it be lost? Will people be consulted? Do we have any indication?
I think that's a really good question, actually. Because you know, although as you say it's procedural today, and this is about giving the notice of commencement, we don't know really. We need to see the new MPPF basically first to see what is going forward. So we don't really know what policies we'll be able to retain or how long our policies from our joint local plan one, if we are successful in adopting it, will last. But I think we have to always work within a framework that we're given and be as optimistic and push as much as we can within that framework. So it's one of these really strange situations where we're being told to start a new local plan when we don't know the geography of LGR, because that's a completely separate operation to the local plan process. So we don't know that. We don't know what the MPPF is yet going to say about policies, what policies we can retain or locally retain, actually. So there is that big element of the unknown. So all we can do is just hope that you still want, and hopefully we can bring as much as possible in when we know more. And I know that's your microphone.
Just interesting.
Yeah, that's not very satisfactory. I'm sorry, but I'm hoping. I do hope that we can bring as much as possible in. So keep all those doors, keep them there. We'll see what we can do.
Thank you. Actually, just before I come to Councillor Turner, there is if you read paragraph 25 of the report, there's reference to task 3, which is a scoping consultation. So I was going to ask the same question, whether that was the opportunity to review the full scope of the plan and whether all those other policies would be taken forward. Is that the case, or is that a different exercise?
No, I think it will probably be more towards Gateway 2. So Gateway 1, which is October, the scoping consultation will take place before Gateway 1. And from what I understand, that's going to be quite sort of minimum at this stage, not least because our focus is also on getting on joint local plan 1 through. But I simply think that's not perhaps the stage where it's more limited, basically, the scoping consultation. It will be next year towards Gateway 2. I think there's a timetable somewhere, isn't there? And by the way, with timetables, we did at times at the LDS on the previous item. So although there's no local development, it's going off.
It might be helpful for you to change microphones, given that you're likely to be speaking again. So we'll just keep an eye on the light. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Councillor Turner, do you have a question?
Yeah, forgive me, I've been away the last 2 weeks and I deliberately not take my laptop with me. We had the examination started in public to our new emergency local plan, which was really about what all the developers wanted. And I think our officers did perform very well at that. I was under the understanding that the examination in public of our new emerging local plan was going to start in June. Is that not the case anymore?
The second stage hearings for our examination, our local plan examination, are starting on the week beginning 6th of July. So it'll be 7th, I think 6th is a Monday, so 7th, 8th, 9th, if I'm correct. And then there's a Friday left if needed. So that will be the second stage of hearings. And then we, if all goes well, we'll be expecting another set of hearings, the third stage hearings in the autumn probably.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I see no other questions. Oh, Councillor Topping, a question.
Yes, to Anne-Marie. Am I right in assuming that JLP1, the earliest adoption for that is probably going to be around May of 27? If you then look at the timescale for the new plan, JLP2, they're going to sort of catch up with each other. And I reckon that one will be within 2 years. So the lifetime of JLP1 could be less than 2 years. Just strikes me as extraordinarily wasteful. All that effort, all that time, and it could have a lifespan of 2 years. So it's more a comment, really.
I know it is. It is surprising when you look at it like that. And obviously, this paper in front of us now to decide on is the notice of commencement for Joint Local Plan 2. And you're right, the Joint Local Plan 1 is expected to, at the moment, under the LDS item that we just voted on, be adopted in May 2027. Of course, again, the timetable could flex a little bit before, a little bit after, but that's basically what our expectation is at the moment in the LDS. The Joint Local Plan 2, although it's a 30-month period starting from the October 31st date, it will take it into the new council for adoption. So our Joint Local Plan 1 will still be us as council members to adopt.
Okay, so I think we've cleared up any questions. We will now move into debate. So I think anyone wanting to speak will have 5 minutes to make their comments. I have Councillor Rawlins and no doubt others, and Councillor Bennett. So Councillor Rawlins, please.
So far, the government's muddle and confusion over direction has caused at least a 6-month delay to JLP1, as you have just heard, in agreeing the LDS scheme, and it could be a bit longer even than that. Now we're required to do a new plan concurrently with the old plan, which places a huge and unreasonable burden on officers. Why? It would appear that government seeks a rush to their higher housing requirements, although they pay no attention to which type and whether they meet the need. Their new plan making regime and more top-down national and central influences, including, as we've heard elsewhere, the national scheme of delegation, effectively the end of planning committees, and national DM policies. But ultimately, in all of this, we have no choice. In terms of this paper, I agree that we should retain the governance and joint approach that we have had to date, and we know that a joint plan is hugely cost effective. So that's all good. I would just urge that we be a little cautious this time in how we carry it through, because undoubtedly the new higher housing requirements will likely push us into having to have some new site allocations across South Oxfordshire and Vale of White Horse. So we need to be thoughtful to make sure that there's a balance and an acceptance on both sides that what's being done is fair and reasonable. I personally think we need to take account of a different kind of economics and set an approach of more jobs and employment sites away from Oxford so that there are more jobs closer to where people actually live already. South and Vale are both characterised by long out commutes, and this is bad for their lives, productivity and the environment. So I think we can do better on that. When it comes to adoption of this new plan, even with the 30-month fast track or shortcut timetable now set by national government, it will be after the new unitaries are assumed to be in power from May 2028. But to be fair, we've all said in the past that the old national plan making system was in fact too slow. So yeah, there is some merit in the faster 30-month approach. But ultimately, we do need to proceed with this. It's a requirement, and so we have to do it. And at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. So I will be supporting this simply because it's a necessity.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And I do agree with much of, I think with all of what Councillor Rawlins just said. But from our role here on the, and probably as councillors, this may be our only opportunity in full council to discuss this plan because we're never going to get to sign it off. We can only assume. It does feel like the beginning of my councillor term back in 2019 began with being dictated to by the government, and we're going out in the same way by the looks of things. I was trying to check in my head the timetable of all these various things that have happened because it does start to make you question your sanity. And I was earlier on, I know you've all read it, Statutory Instrument 2026, number 186. It is a cracking read. But you can see the government lawyers have had fun going, how can we really catch out those councils, or is it 37 of them, that have outwitted us by correctly following the rules? And they've spent a long time coming up with terminology to do that. And they made it retrospective. So they put it out in March 2026. Now, it does seem like a really ridiculous situation. I've got every sympathy with the administration and with the brilliant planning policy officers. And we were all, we've all been very supportive of the joint local plan and the policies in it. We're really proud of it. And as Councillor Topping just said, the adoption of a new plan will override that plan because that's how it works. And I keep thinking of, we've been talking about devolution earlier, and the somewhat emptiness of that phrase in the hands of the Labour government. The Labour government is so and apologies to my Labour colleagues here, I don't blame you at all, but but the Labour government has gone into power they've got a huge majority, and after 2 years they're ditching, very likely to ditch the Prime Minister and to be replaced by one of the devolved mayors, it looks like, because it's been characterised by really rushed legislation like the Levelling Up Act, which is acting completely. It's always seemed like they plucked the number 1.5 million houses out of the air. There was no way that was ever achievable, and we know. I also read earlier on the Growth Commission's report on Oxfordshire. Again, we could have written that report. We knew all it really makes clear is the barriers to the housing sites that we already approved in the 2035 local plan. Only 2 of those major sites have come forward so far because the barriers to them are nothing to do with planning or allocations. They're to do with infrastructure, or they're to do with sewage, or things that have nothing whatsoever to do with councils. So the idea that simply by hitting councils over the head and forcing us to allocate yet more sites to not be built because there's no infrastructure and no sewage works, it is quite demoralising for us as councillors. I'm sure you're all feeling that. And similarly, I liken it to a school bully that's lost a game, so they changed the rules of the game. But they also, with the new MPPF and strategic development strategies, whatever they're called, that they're supposed to be, that does make sense. Like, okay, we'll have a regional level plan, but that doesn't exist. So being asked to play by new rules of the game, but when they're not going to tell us what the rules are yet. So it feels like a very, if I may use the term, Kafkaesque situation. So I think it's really difficult for us as councillors to endorse proceeding. I understand why we probably have to as a council, but I'm very uncomfortable with it, and I think it undermines the good work that we've done. And the council was highly commended for public engagement on the joint local plan, rightly so. And one of our objectives is greater clarity and simplicity for service users engaging with the plan process. I mean, we can't even make head or tails of it as councillors. I don't really see how stakeholders and the public, they're going to be completely baffled, aren't they?
30 seconds.
I don't think I need to say any more, but we do have every sympathy with those that are trying to navigate this process, but it's very difficult to imagine endorsing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this paper? Go on, Councillor Snowden. Don't let us down.
Why not? It's on Councillor Bennett there. Just quite interesting. Opposition parties do make like wild claims like getting 1.5 million houses built to get votes. It's nothing new, is it? Perhaps some parties might even promise to scrap this joint local plan at the next election. That seems to be a gimmick sometimes used. We're being told to do a second local plan. We're getting money for it. It's an absurd idea with the local government reform coming in. So I'll be abstaining because I just can't believe we're doing it, and it's a waste of time, but also residents' money. So that's what my position.
Short and sweet. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? I don't think so. Councillor Bearder, please.
I'll keep it shorter. I agree with Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. If there are no other speakers, Councillor Philipova-Rivers, would you like to make your comments?
Yeah, I think perhaps we should theme this meeting things that are being done to us. I think it would be quite appropriate. And here is another agenda item that just does just that. It is, I agree with more or less everything that others have said, including Councillor Snowden, but we have no choice. I mean, the longevity of JLP, a plan that we have laboured over for so many years, and I think we really pushed the envelope in terms of our policies, and to know that it will be so short-lived is really, really sad to us all, I am sure. But we are where we are, and we need to get cracking. I think we have pushed back with government. We have asked questions to see, why on earth are we creating a plan for a geography that will not exist? But there you go. So I think there was some questions around what can we use in terms of policies. I actually asked that question at the steering group around evidence, hoping that we can salvage some of the evidence. It hasn't been that long since we've collected it, and I was assured that perhaps we could. We would have to update it, of course, but as it's recent, hopefully that won't be too onerous. There are going to be things. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, no, I saw you squinting, trying to lip read from that distance. Impressive. There are going to be things that are being streamlined away. Some may be sensible, some less so. Things like the statement of community involvement is going to go, but that is not to say that we will not seek to engage really constructively with our communities, but it will be fast-paced. And I guess at a time where all of us are being abolished in not too long, I really want to urge all of you to keep abreast and keep on top of this process, because as Councillor Rawlings said, there are going to be higher numbers. The new standard method numbers are going to be higher. We know this, and so there will be new sites. And again, I think there's no monopoly on good ideas, and I think it's really important that until the bitter end that we remain committed to supporting our communities through this process as well. Councillor Bennett will be happy to know we have written to Neil Coleman. I've read that interim report with joy, as you can imagine, but we have kind of shared some ideas as to how the actual challenges can be tackled, because I think it is a little bit unfair to constantly, challenge local authority and our authorities and our capacities to actually manage those type of sites. So I will leave it there. Yeah, this is not, I will be supporting this, but because we have to get on with it. But yeah, there's no joy in having to go through this process. But just one last, you mentioned spatial development strategies. I would say that the policy team, their workload with the new JLP, with the spatial development strategies, and currently going through hearings and more hearings to be had, they're really, really pressured. They are embracing and doing their jobs, but ultimately, yeah, their workload has tripled. So I think we need to just recognise that. They are pretty upbeat, actually, surprisingly. I saw Lucy Mufford earlier, but please do send us them our thanks, and we wish them well for the upcoming hearings next month.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's quite neat follow on initially what I'm going to say from what Councillor Filipova Rivers has said, because what she has said is she's pointing to recognising also the considerable changes ahead. I mean, we've got to shape and influence planning in our area. We've got new planning system, which we're talking about triggering tonight in our area. We've got LGR, we've got the new the local government reorganisation, the strategic development strategy coming ahead, the Greater Oxford Development Core, and of course the new national planning policy framework. So certainly our officers aren't sitting still, and I think all our heads are spinning. But I wanted to just say that although joint local plan could have a short life, and that's been touched on by a few speakers, I want to reassure members that we'll do whatever we can to retain the evidence that we did prepare for Joint Local Plan 1 to support the new local plan and update where needed, for example, the landscape evidence, which I think has served us well since it's been live, if you like. And then coming round to what we're here for tonight, which is the Joint Local Plan 2 and the Notice of Commencement. Just to touch on Councillor Topping's point, it looks like April 2029 when that would be adopted. So it is a while off. The scoping consultation. So we have the Notice of Commencement to vote on tonight. So assuming that we say yes to that, then we have a scoping consultation before Gateway 1 in October, so probably in September. And although it's limited, what we will do is ask people what we want to see in the plan and what they want to engage with then. So we have, although we're losing the statement of community value, we are going to be working on a community engagement strategy. It's not yet drafted, but obviously it will go through steering group as well as the cabinet members first. And that strategy will be informed by the responses from the consultation also in September. Because we need to ensure that this leads to effective engagement with plan making. I think Councillor Bennett, referred to how successful our engagement was with Joint Local Plan 1, and we don't want to lose that knowledge and that ability. And so we're going to be working closely with the comms team again, continuing to work closely with the comms team and engagement with plan making, with their engagement in plan making. So hopefully we can make the best of what's a really challenging situation. And I would like to thank the leader as well for mentioning our officers in the planning policy team who have really stepped up to the mark as usual and are working on this twin tracking very effectively. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are going to now vote on the recommendations that are set out on page 34 of your pack, the 3 recommendations. I suggest we, by show of hands, could I ask for all of those who wish to vote in favour of these recommendations to raise their hands now?
Oh, sorry, I can see.
18.
18. Thank you. If anybody would like to vote against the recommendations, please show your hands. And abstentions?
Oh, 9. Is that?
Okay. Hmm? Right. Thank you, Council. Those recommendations are carried. So we move on to agenda item 7. Council is invited to consider the report of the Director of Legal and Democratic and the proposal to reappoint the current independent persons by a further term of 2 years until May 2028. I will propose the recommendations as set out in the report, and I believe Councillor Owain will be seconding those recommendations. Would the Director of Legal and Democratic like to introduce the item? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, of course. Section 3 of the report sets out that there is a duty on the council to appoint at least one independent person. You'll see the report recommends the reappointment of 5 independent persons. I would say, Chair, through you, that we are fortunate to have several very experienced independent persons with a lot of experience of governance and complaint handling in a variety of organisations. The big advantage for you as members and for the public is that means that several independent persons can support different parts of the same complaint. So supporting the subject member who's been complained about, the complainant, the committee, if one needs to be called, the panel rather. JAG is going to receive a confidential report on complaint handling next month, as it does annually, and that will show that informal resolution is able to be achieved to the satisfaction of complainants in almost all cases. I would say, Chair, to your members, that is very much at the door of our exceptional independent persons supporting a process of mediation and reconciliation for those complaints in most cases. This extension will allow us to maintain a strong application of the Code of Conduct for the full life of this council. And Chair, I hope the report is straightforward, but I'll end there unless your committee has any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Nick? Councillor Arlett.
Yeah, who are these people? I'm sure anybody elected in 2023 would not have a clue who they're voting for tonight, because the last time these people were elected was in 2022. I would at least thought we'd have had a bio. Nick's just mentioned there are 5 people. I have 6 people on my list here. So I think that needs to be corrected for a start. But I may know one of them. Chris Smith, is that a man or a woman? I haven't got a clue. So I think we should know exactly who these people are. And I'll say, anybody elected 2023, I'm sorry, but they wouldn't have a clue unless they've been to a hearing. So I'm not sure if Mike Giles has been to a hearing at all. But unless they have, honestly, we're just voting for names on a piece of paper. Sorry, Nick, but that's the way it is from me.
Chair, they are all, there are 6, you're quite right, I miscounted, sorry about that. And I'm grateful for the chance to correct that. They are all ladies and gentlemen who have experience in working in similar positions or similar roles of complaint handling in organisations, mostly national organisations in such things as the insurance industry and the police. Complaint handling. They were appointed previously and this council agreed to all of them, and there was an individual recruitment process that was carried out the last time, as you say. Chair, if members wished me to return with this, then of course I can, but if we did so, you wouldn't have independent persons for the period until the next report was offered. I'm perfectly happy to take away the action perhaps to share the previously distributed CVs, I'll call it resumes, I think, of those to Councillor Arlett or anyone else who wishes to see it. But they were previously went through an interview process that which I understand was fairly exhaustive. I hope that's sufficient for your members, Chair. But if there's more I can do, I'd be more than willing to do so.
Thank you. I'll accept your offer to circulate some information about the candidates after the meeting. Thank you. But I think we do need to take a vote on this tonight. Councillor Gordon-Creed.
Thank you, Chair. Just because I'm curious, and I couldn't see anything referring to this, how much work do they do? How many, do we get a summary or report of what actually, how many complaints and all of that? Does that go somewhere? Just curious, that's all.
Chair, thank you, through you. Yes, it gets reported. I take a report to JAG every year, and JAG members will recall with excitement the presentation. It goes through, we get, so this year, I've just done the report for this year. It is confidential because of the nature of what's discussed on that, which can be very broad. We get, I think from memory, for this council, about just over a dozen complaints that went past the initial validation stage. And remember that there's several stages to it. And in the region of 70, I think, informal complaints that didn't get put in with a full form, which the independent persons aren't always involved in, but can be and typically are in I would say, the majority of cases, 2/3. But I'll be reporting in full on that with sort of line by line description of the complaints, how they were handled, what the outcomes were to JAG, as I say, which is next month.
Thank you. Now, is there any debate on this item? Councillor Rawlins.
Thank you, Chair. I would strongly support this proposition. It seems to me that we have got 6 good independent people to provide the role that we seek. And we are in a period of huge change in local government. Some areas are, of course, ahead of us on local government reorganisation. Being good people, these won't have any lack of opportunities to be employed. And I think that we do very well to secure their services through to the end of this council. And I see no reason, given that all due process has been followed in their original appointment, and given that there's been no reason that we're given to understand that there's any demerit in their performance to date, I think it's entirely sensible and reasonable to secure their services through to the end, sadly.
Thank you. Do you want to speak, Leda? Yeah, go ahead.
Just really briefly, yeah, likewise, I think unless there has been an issue with any of them, we don't have periodic interviews and recruitment processes for our staff. I don't see why we need for these people. But actually, I wanted to ask the monitoring officer if we can maybe not use the word demise of the council. It sounds really final. I hope we will exist in some form beyond this, but it's it must be a legal term. I'm sure it is.
I'll try and come up with a new form of words. Fading, I don't know what we'll call it, but yeah, no, I take the point. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, as the proposer of this item, I would just recommend that we support the recommendations coming from our monitoring officer. It seems entirely pragmatic and sensible. And given that we have a governance process through JAG, I think we can be comfortable that these independent persons are doing a good service to this council. So I suggest we support it. Councillor Owain? Councillor, can we agree this motion? Proposal. Yep. Yeah. That's agreed. Thank you, Council. Happens all the time. Right. Okay, let's move on. Agenda item 8, Councillors' Allowances Scheme. Council is invited to consider the independent remuneration panel's recommendations in respect of the level of special responsibility allowance payable for the co-chair of the newly established Joint Climate and Nature Advisory Committee. Again, I will be proposing the recommendations as set out in the report, and Councillor Wayne, you will be seconding those recommendations. Thank you. Would the Director of Legal and Democratic like to introduce this item?
Thank you, Chair. Again, yes, I'll be brief. Members will remember completing the adoption of the general allowances structure. This item is simply a mechanism needed to apply recommendations from the same body, the Independent Remuneration Panel, for the work to that newly established Joint Climate and Nature Advisory Committee. Hopefully, you all know those persons. I'm hoping, therefore, it's not contentious. And I'm here to answer any questions your members have, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No. Great. So, as proposer, I recommend that we accept the recommendations, that each co-chair of the Joint Climate and Nature Advisory Committee should each receive 50% of the current Tier 6 SRA payable by the respective council. And I would also like to pass on our thanks to the remuneration panel, who I know do a very thorough job and very professional job of assessing what allowances should be paid. So please do pass on our thanks to them. Councillor Rain, would you like to say anything?
Seconded.
Councillor, can we agree this recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you all for your attendance. I will now close the meeting at 7:13 p.m.